You are tuned in to Recovery TV, the voice of hope. Discussions and information on addiction and mental health issues. Here is your host, John J. Tassoni Jr., with today's guest.
Welcome to Recovery TV. I'm your host, John Tassoni. This is the voice of hope. My guest today is Dr. Skip. And Dr. Skip has a story about his life, how he turned it around, and actually got a letter to play professional football for the Chicago Bears. Dr. Skip, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Good to see you, John. Always enjoyed talking to you on the radio. Now we can do it
On the TV.
on the TV.
Yep.
Well, thanks. I wasn't ready to talk about my life, but I'll be glad to do that. I could go on forever. Basically, I got into this business the hard way. I had to become addicted to opiates and alcohol before I got recovery, and that's how I backed into it. But started out with a great life. Born a long time ago in Brockton, Massachusetts. Was my way through school, like everybody did well in high school and college. Got into Harvard College, played football for Harvard College, got admitted to Harvard Medical School, and I also got a letter to go try out. I wasn't drafted, but try out for the Chicago Bears. I decided not to do that at the time for financial pressures. I was going to go right to school with somebody who's going to pay for my school, and went to Harvard Medical School and found that I was still screwing around in medical school, got myself in trouble. And the last day of the first year, they called me in the day before I got married and said, you haven't done very well, and this is the first year we've ever gone past fail, and you failed. And I said, and the guy said to me, we can work on this over the summer, but he said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, I'm getting married. He said, oh, I'm sorry. We'll come back after the honeymoon. So I went away, had a honeymoon, didn't go very well, wasn't honest with my wife, and just told her I had summer work to do in the medical school. Came back, and after they tested me for a long time, decided I was able to stay at the medical school, or I could go to second-year medical school at a pretty good medical school in North Carolina, not to be named. But they were going to help me do what I missed the first year. I was just partying too much in the first year, because all A's and everything in the college had always come easy to me. Suddenly, this was serious business. I was surrounded by 99 adults. I was the only kid. Went back, studied, found surgery, loved surgery, had a new lease on life, wanted to take out gallbladders for the rest of my life, did very well. When internship came, I went to California, turned into love surgery, was having a great time when I had an accident to my arm. It was an accident that had nothing to do with being impaired. A bull came down, crushed my arm, cut my ulnar artery, my ulnar nerve, 5 tendons. Had to go into surgery for 9 hours. It took me 6 months to rehab. Went back into surgery, and I was a little bit nervous and afraid because the hand didn't work very well. Then I decided to go into emergency medicine. At that time, I left my surgery residency. Then for the next 25 years, I ran ERs in the Los Angeles area. And I did pretty well at that, and started taking care of rock and roll stars. Flew all over the country, took care of big names, and enjoyed a pretty unsupervised life, but things came well to me. I was a good ER doctor. I never had any trouble in the emergency room. The surgical things in the emergency room are different from in the operating room. And then I'd also blown up to over 400 pounds. I quickly had the operation way before it became in vogue. I lost about 150 pounds at that time. But I'd always been a drinker, but always could control it. Once I got the taste of Vicodin, it was over. And over the ensuing years, as I was running a bunch of emergency rooms, I started to not only drink badly, but I started writing myself Vicodin prescriptions. Worked my way up to 150 Vicodins a day. That was, you can get away with that now for a month, let alone a year. And I got busted by a pharmacist, which I should have. And I got my license taken away. Lost all my jobs, all my income, and went into a real dive. I was clean for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, or maybe 8 weeks after I went into bad withdrawal from 150 Vicks a day. And then I found drink, and I went. It was legal. I was feeling bad, and it took me another 9 months for me to realize that there was nowhere but death if I kept going. And I literally lost all my properties. Didn't lose my family, but we had to move out of a house. I personally was ashamed to go home. I ended up living on a rooftop in in Manhattan Beach, California, outside of Los Angeles, on the water, and used to go to AA meetings because now I had no connections to buy drugs. I was afraid to buy drugs, but I could go and steal booze and steal money from people, my family. And one day I was sitting on that roof, and I kept thinking, gee, I'm not really sure why all those guys in the AA, because you can go quietly drunk to AA meetings in Los Angeles, shut your mouth, they'll let you sit there and not be a problem, of course.
Right.
And then I go climb back up and drink. And I kept thinking, gee, I was supposed to be a smart guy, but I kept figuring out how can I not finish this bottle of pop off? I remember the bottle could still be there for all I know, unless they've torn down the building. And I kept looking at it and thinking, how come all those guys and gals in the meetings were free and happy? I couldn't understand it. I kept trying to say, what makes me different from them? It was only the realization, hey, I'm not different from them. I'm the same as them. I'm not like those alcoholics. I'm one of them. And suddenly, that flash of insight or divine inspiration, for people, I'm not all that sure about my spirituality. I mean, I believe there's something bigger, but I don't like to preach to people because now I don't want to scare people.
Right.
But in an instant, I just went, I don't have to worry about not taking my next drink. I just had my last drink. I'm not like those alcoholics. I'm one of them, and that gave me proof. So I climbed down from the roof, and since that day, 21 years ago, I have not had another drink. About 9 months before that, I stopped the Vicodin. I lost everything. I had to work hard to get my license back. It took me 5 years to get it back. As I say, didn't drink, didn't drug. Decided, and I'm lucky because I can talk about my addiction because I'm in this field. And for the last 15 years, I couldn't get the license back in California. They kept moving the goalposts, and so I decided to come back to Rhode Island, where I'd had a license for a short period of time, so it was reapplying. They heard me out. I was already 3 years sober by the time I got here, or 4. They made me jump through the steps and do everything, which I was happy to do. Went into the program for 5 years. Get 8 urines a month for almost 5 years. They cut it down near the end. Got my license back, became board certified addiction medicine, and now for 15 years I've been doing nothing but treating addiction. So that's the short story.
So, we talked a little bit about, you talked a little bit about your family.
Yeah.
Tell me about your wife.
Well, my wife's the best. She is as honest as the day is long, but rough. She came close to leaving me, and she didn't. She supported me. I had made a lot of money until I had fallen, and she was used to not having to work. She had been a teacher when I was in medical school, and so basically what happened was she hung around long enough for me to come back and found me the day I got sober, and I moved back in with her, and she stayed with me since then. She didn't cut any, she told the kids everything, the truth. Some of them are happier about, not happier, some of them supported me, others were just so frightened and afraid. But now they're all great, and everything worked out because she was there.
Yeah, and I think your story is a story of many folks.
Yes,
Many
absolutely.
folks, you know, and I want to talk when we come back about how you got on the road to recovery and become a doctor, and now you're helping people.
Okay.
So you're listening and watching Recovery TV. I'm your host, John Tassoni. This man is the voice of hope, and we'll be right back after this.
You know, every week I work in stadiums filled with thousands and talk to thousands more on the radio, which means people who come from every walk of life. And I know that many, like my own family, have grieved over loved ones caught in the grip of addiction. 8 years ago, we lost my nephew to an overdose. But I've also seen in friends and even fans who've shared their stories, others break that hold and regain control of their lives. You can do the same. Please know you're not alone.
Local 57 Operating Engineers is Rhode Island's source for professional heavy equipment operators. For the last 120 years, Local 57 members have worked on all of Rhode Island's major construction projects, including buildings, roads, and bridges. If you're looking for professionally trained and licensed operators to run your excavators, loaders, cranes, or any other type of construction equipment, give us a call at 421-6678. If you're an experienced heavy equipment operator and would like to join our team, give us a call.
Treatment is often far more successful when individuals are offered both medication and behavioral therapy. Kodak Behavioral Health Care is Rhode Island's largest, only nonprofit, outpatient provider of care for opioid use disorder.
Our compassionate clinicians deliver the highest level of care for patients.
Through Kodak's medication-assisted treatment program, patients are prescribed methadone, buprenorphine, Suboxone, and naltrexone. For a confidential conversation, call Kodak.
Serving the community for more than 30 years, 3 generations of our family at Wesco Oil have been providing reliable comfort to your home.
From oil delivery to installation and service, you can trust us to maintain your heating and cooling systems year-round. Visit us at bewarm.com to choose an option that best meets your needs. Be cool or be warm. We've got you covered. Honest service at a competitive price. Wesco Oil Company.
I started getting in trouble when I was real young. I was bringing knives to school in the 3rd grade. I started hanging out with the wrong crowds. I envisioned that if I wasn't dead by 26, I'd be in jail. I never had plans past that. Tides give me the opportunity to start a new life fresh. So now to be 28 with 4 children, married, manage this restaurant, living in a house, it's a miracle. Life is incredible, and Tides is who I have to thank for that.
Welcome back to Recovery TV. I'm your host, John Tassoni. This is a station and a TV show of the Voice of Hope. And Dr. Skip is my guest today. You heard the first part of his story. And so, Doc, what are you doing now?
Well, I have a private practice. It is primarily Suboxone, some people with alcohol use disorder. And I'm happy to say that they're doing a very good job. I require my patients on Suboxone to aim toward recovery at all times and not slip off into any other medication, and it's been very successful. I've got well over 200 patients there that are doing well, and basically when they come in, we talk about their life, their family, their home. Over 40 new homes bought by people who were intravenous drug users who never been able to buy a home before, so that makes me happy. I'm also the medical director at The Journey, and have about 1,200 methadone patients that I started taking care of about 6 months ago on an outpatient basis.
What is Suboxone?
Suboxone really is a terrific medication which partially activates receptors in your brain. Suboxone is a drug which in the old days could be very easily induced into people. You had to go into withdrawal for 1 or 1.5 days only. Then you could be given Suboxone, which would get into the receptors that were empty, that you were withdrawing because your brain because your Vicodin or your heroin or your morphine or your oxycodone had fallen out and you were in withdrawal. And so you could take Suboxone if you waited long enough and it would rush right in, fill up the receptor and slightly activate it. If you take it too early, because it was such a strong, it could attach strongly to the receptor, it would throw you into withdrawal. So you had to make sure people were in withdrawal, but it could be the last time they ever went into withdrawal before. So you tell somebody who's doing 150 Vicodins a day or a $500 habit of heroin a day, you got to go into withdrawal one more time. It was very attractive. And in those days, 10 years ago, when Suboxone first came out, it was in fact a miracle drug. I thought everybody should go on Suboxone who could, and it works like a charm. And once you're on it, Suboxone, the beauty of Suboxone is no matter how long you're on it, you don't need to take more like you do every other opiate. This is an opioid, but when it gets into the receptor, it just tickles the receptor a little bit. It doesn't turn on the receptor all the way. And so consequently, people get a little energy from it, but if they take too much, they get sick. It works on, they give them nausea and everything else, so you can't overdose it. So if you use on top of it, it will not break through the Suboxone. So if you test out whether or not you can continue to take Vicodin or shoot heroin, it will not work.
So you're on Suboxone.
Right.
What happens?
You take it, it's made to be taken once a day. Sometimes people like to take it 2 or 3 times a day. But what it does do is it keeps all the receptors in your brain, which were tuned up, had become needing more and more and more opiate before you get on Suboxone. It holds them and very slowly unwinds the receptors, trying to go back to the before you ever used. And it does take months to years. And the idea that you're going to come off it, when it gets in your brain, it has the added value of hanging around for 2 days, so that if you forget a dose, you're still okay. But what you do is you maintain it, allow you to not have any more craving, not feel any withdrawals, and get about your life. So when my patients are ready to get about their lives and say, I'm ready to come down, it does take time. It's not as hard to get off as some other things, but it'll take you about a year for every 8 milligrams that you're on. But you do that completely painlessly as you quietly sort of do the reverse of tolerance. Tolerance is on the way up, you need more and more and more. On the way down, you just gradually take away little bits of the Suboxone. And in that period of time, when you're getting your receptors back to normal, which takes the years that you were addicted to, by then you're a completely different person. I mean, if you've worked on it, obviously, if you want to use, you can use.
Right.
But getting away from it, getting away from the sources and everything else, is what makes people come in dancing in. Hi, how are you? My life's great now. And so it's a terrific medication.
Is it a daily dose that you take?
Yes, yeah, it is.
The same dose every day?
Yes, until you start to go down, and then you go very slowly. Okay. Everybody thinks they can go slowly enough, because occasionally when you miss a dose, you go, oh my God, I didn't have a dose yesterday. That's because the medication actually hangs around for over 2 days in your brain. So if you forget a dose, you're walking around with a little extra supply in your cerebral spinal fluid.
Yeah.
Your brain juice has got it. It's got to get into a receptor to work, so you've always got a reserve there. That's why you can stop Suboxone people for a day and go, I'm okay for a day or 2 or 3. But if you haven't been on it long enough to allow your brain to adjust itself down, then you'll say, damn, I still have some craving, but you won't as long as you're on it. You do it correctly, and now, 10 years after it's around, I've got 30, 40 people that are not only off it, but call me up, send me the card that I always ask them to, let me know if you're in trouble again. So it's a long process, but you stop the pain the first couple of days you're on it. You just have to make sure that you don't jump into another mind-altering drug and cross-addiction takes over. Right. You don't want them drinking and, anything.
Right. Well, for the people that are watching, when a client comes in,
yes,
and visits you for the first time.
Right.
Say I come in and say, Doc, I got all these problems here. You need to put me on Suboxone, or you suggest Suboxone. How long does it take for them to level off? Meaning to the point that there's no more cravings. Does it take a week, 2 weeks, a month?
Well, it's different now.
Yeah.
It's important to know that there's something out there now in the last 7 years which has changed this completely. But let's go back to 7 years ago. When you came in 7 years ago and said to me, I'm using too many Vicodins a day, too many oxycodone a day. Right. I'm on heroin. Mm-hmm. And I would say, look, you don't look to me like you're in withdrawal yet. No, I used this morning. Okay. I could test what it was. You either had heroin, which is actually shows up as morphine, or you had Vicodin, or you had oxycodone. And I would say, okay, for the next 24 hours, you come back and see me early tomorrow morning, don't use anything. And if you're if you're physical withdrawal, I could then be assured that when I determine that you're in enough withdrawal, usually a little bit long for oxycodone, bang, I give you Suboxone, you dissolve it under your tongue, and you're done. You start to get better, and you don't get high. It just brings you out of withdrawal. It stops all the physical changes, and so you could, in fact, have one last day of withdrawal and then go forward. A little bit different with the fentanyl that's out there now, which is not really fentanyl, but it's 30 or 40 different compounds out there.
Right.
That is not as easy to induce because some of that stuff hangs around longer. But for straight heroin, which there is almost none out there anymore, and for pills like Vicks and Percocets, it can still be done in 1 day.
Unbelievable, the stuff that's on the street today.
It is truly unbelievable.
You're listening to Recovery TV. I'm your host, John Tassoni. This gentleman right here is the voice of hope. We'll be right back after this.
Alcohol and drug addiction, depression, anxiety, PTSD, they can all seem overwhelming, but you don't have to face them alone. At Trinity Village, we are committed to providing addiction treatment that works. We specialize in offering integrated care for co-occurring mental and substance use disorders. We offer cutting-edge medicated assisted treatment and medication management. We are now offering virtual care to get the treatment you need from the comfort of your home. If you or someone you love needs help, call or visit us online at trinityvillage.org.
I think when you're actively struggling with an addiction, you don't realize the harm that it's causing to the people in your circle, in your family, and your friends. By quitting and getting help, I was able to heal a lot of relationships that were damaged, and you find that people come back to you. Someone used to say to me that it's darkest just before dawn. So if you think that you've gone too far, it's not true. No matter what problems you have, your life can get better if you get help.
Addiction Recovery Institute with locations in Pawtucket and Warwick have been the leaders in treatment of opioid use disorder since 1993. Addiction Recovery Institute offers same-day admission, no waiting list. Services include medicated assisted treatment, detoxification, and substance counseling, always providing care to those who are most in need with dignity and respect. For more information, visit methadone.com.
The Parent Support Network is committed to supporting and assisting peers. Together, they're working with statewide and national partners to empower children, families, and individuals through dynamic supports, education, and advocacy to prevent abuse and neglect and progress toward universal health, wellness, and recovery. A location is near you. Child and Family Visitation and Training Center in Warwick, Hope Recovery Community Center in Middletown, Hope Recovery Community Center of Washington County in Westerly, or online at psnri.org.
If you or someone you know is struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, the members of Horizon Healthcare Partners are here to help. Kodak, Community Care Alliance, Newport Mental Health, Thrive Behavioral Health, and Tides Family Services serve the behavioral health needs of all Rhode Islanders. We also operate BH Link, the state's 24/7 behavioral health emergency center. For help, call the 24/7 hotline at 401-414-LINK. For more information, visit Horizon Healthcare Partners at hhpartners.org.
Welcome back to Recovery TV. I'm your host, John Tassoni. This program is the voice of hope. My guest today is Dr. Skip, and he is a perfect example of this hope and recovery. All right, Doc, welcome back. Thank you for
Love being here.
Thank you for joining us today. I want to talk a little bit about fentanyl.
Right.
What's on the street. We're going to break another record this year, it looks like, for overdoses. Yes. I know you said you had 200 patients. You probably could have 600 patients, but let's talk a little bit about fentanyl and what's on the street.
It's very important that people realize this is not just a stronger heroin. As I mentioned before, there's almost no heroin out anymore. We test people all the time, and heroin's rare. People even think they're getting heroin, and they're not. The problem is, in the old days, treating with methadone or Suboxone or whatever, heroin was only 2 times as strong per molecule as morphine. Morphine molecule, let's take one morphine molecule as the basis against which all other opiates are measured. Mm-hmm. Pure heroin, not stepped-on heroin, was only twice as strong as morphine. The real fentanyl in a hospital fentanyl, which has nothing to do with the stuff that's going on now, is 3.5 times as strong as morphine. Along comes the stuff that China started putting out 7 years ago. It's at least 30 to 40 compounds. It comes this gray-white powder that's being churned out together. In the very least strong stuff, the weakest of it is 20 times as strong as morphine and goes to 100 times. If I had a piece of paper, it'd have to be a long one because that's 2 log values up. That's up 10 and then another 10 to 100. The 100 times as strong is the so-called carfentanil, the elephant tranquilizer, the stuff that 4 or 5 grains of salt size will kill you dead. That is all mixed in this mess. And when you use it, the real problem is of all these different compounds, people really stop measuring the compounds because it takes too long. By the time you've measured all these different compounds, all of a sudden, boom, and the stuff hangs around for 2 weeks. So it makes life very difficult to transfer people over to either Suboxone or methadone. Can be done, but it's a different beast. Really too strong and hangs around 2 weeks instead of 1 day. So that's basically what's out there, and you never know what you get. And they are now making very lifelike. They started making Percocet 30s. They look real. Then they made all the benzos. You can get Xanax, Valium, Klonopin. They look just like it. They're throwing it in marijuana. They're throwing it in cocaine. And they're now making Adderall. None of those have anything except fentanyl in them.
You know, Dr. Skip, I'm going to invite you back.
Oh, thank you.
A wealth of knowledge.
Love
You've
to
been
get-
watching Recovery TV. I'm your host, John Tassoni. This gentleman right here is the voice of hope. Please join us again next Sunday on MRI TV and CW. MRI TV at 9:30 and CW at 11:30. We look forward to seeing you back here next week.
My first experience with addiction was actually with a family member. And I was very young at the time. I didn't really understand everything that was going on, but I knew that it really rocked my family to the core. Now, thank God that family member got the help that they needed. Sometimes you get yourself backed into a corner and feel like you've got to do it alone, but I think it's important for those people that are in that situation right now in their lives to understand they don't have to do it alone. You know, you can make it through this, you can get back on track.
If you're struggling with addiction to pain pills or heroin, it's time to call Groups Recover Together. Groups will get you the medicine you need to feel better.
When I took Suboxone, I felt just like able to function, no sickness, no, anxious feeling.
And will give you the support you need to build the life worth being sober for. The time commitment is minimal, just 1 hour a week. You can meet with us in person or virtually. Call now to get started.
East Bay Recovery Center in Warren connects people in recovery to the supports and activities that make long-term recovery a reality. People with lived experience work to engage individuals and serve as a guide for new recoveries. The Peer Recovery Specialist's aim is to engage high-risk individuals being served in the community to vital treatment and services and follow-up to ensure the connection to treatment and services is maintained. For more information, visit ebcap.org or call 302-6231.
With these,
and this,
with my mouth shut,
and my ears wide open.
It means that from the moment you walk into the room,
You're the most important patient to me.
Trying to get a project or repair done around your home these days is like, well, waiting for paint to dry. So if you have to wait, call 1-800-PAINTING and have a conversation with Lopco Contracting now. Believe me, Lopco's the one contractor worth the wait. Whether it's a painting or repair project or a complete renovation, your home may not be the breakers, but it is still your castle. Call Lopco now at 1-800-PAINTING or log on to LOP as in professional, cocontracting.com for the personable, particular professionals. Salute.
Sunday mornings, join host John J. Tassoni Jr. for Recovery TV, the voice of hope for addiction and mental health issues. Tune in, tell others. Sunday mornings, 11:30 on CW Providence and 9:30 on MyRI TV. Brought to you by AdCare.